love YouTube because I've met and collaborated with people I never otherwise would have met or come across. There's something I've noticed, and I feel like we're all kind of uniquely qualified to talk about this. It's this feeling of the internet. It's like you get sort of unconsciously divided up into camps based on your political beliefs, based on maybe where you are artistically, the content you create, where people think you lie politically, where people think you should be politically, who your friends are, who you end up collaborating with. And a lot of times, like, the viewers will just maybe it's just unconsciously kind of put you in a camp or a category, or and then oftentimes, like, it just feels like every month or even like every couple months there is like a YouTube drama. It's like, to talk about this sounds extremely gay, and like probably people who are listening at home who like don't really watch YouTube much probably think this sounds insane, but there are these like dust ups and there's beefs, and like sometimes they're real, sometimes they're not, sometimes you can monetize them, sometimes it's just you exaggerate it for clicks or something, and it's ultimately, you know, if I'm involved in something like that, I want it to be funny and entertaining and like not get too obsessed. But I want to try to set the stage for what seems like an ongoing beef that's been going on. So there's within YouTube, there are people who are kind of like alternate, like alt content creators, right? And there's a bunch of us who have been for years like commenting on the movies, like Disney's turning woke. Characters are being race swapped, characters are being gender swapped, franchises are being bought up and turned woke instead of following the lore, or honoring the storyline or honoring the fans, and then so out of this frustration, like new art is created, like new maybe sketches or films, like what we saw with Daily Wire. They kind of stopped doing that. I thought they would make more films. They did Terror on the Prairie with Gina Carano. I think they did one other, and then they just went back to Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, and whoever else they've got on there. And there was also like new comic books that sort of like sprung up. And Eric July is he created a comic book called ISOM, and he's on his second campaign right now. He made like $6 million or something like that.
Oh my God. I know he was doing
just
well,
from these
but wow.
two, I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but he did so well. It's all this sort of crowd-funded, online supported, like, yes, you know.
Don't you dare say crowdfunding. Don't you dare.
Wait, is that the wrong phrase for it? I mean, you put forth money and then you get, like, you basically pre-order a thing and then you get the thing when it's made.
Yeah, I said it the other day. I got excoriated. One of the big credits to Eric July is that he front-loaded the cost of starting up his comics. So a lot of the ways crowdfunding works typically in the independent comics community is, people have no publishing infrastructure or anything. So what they do is they get their concept going, they get a little bit of concept art going, and then they crowdfund the book, and then they create the book as they go. That way they're able to pay writers and do advertising and really kind of pump it up. And the crowdfunding comes in, and they're able to then order books and all of that stuff. To Eric's credit, massive credit, he actually got everything mostly ready to go and paid for it all up front. And then he put it up so he could distribute the book much faster. Because some of these things take a year or longer for you to get the product after you order it. You got it with his first book, ISOM. You got it pretty quickly after the campaign ended. So that was a really kind of a new thing. But he did front load the money. But it is still crowdfunding. It's just people are like, it's not crowdfunding. It's like you're asking the crowd directly to contribute money directly to you so you can send out this thing. Is kind of how I understand it, but I don't know.
I didn't realize there was a stigma behind the term crowdfunding. I wonder if people conflate it, like they think it's more charity, or they think it's like, oh no, it's. I didn't know there was.
That's so
something
silly,
negative
though.
behind that.
It's like, how do you expect things to get made?
Yeah,
just magically from no money.
And so this happened. We were all like, wow, like I know Eric July. Like I've had him on my my interview podcast a couple of times. I definitely know him more like peripherally through the FNT guys. Like I always was like, wow, like great for him. He fucking is crushing it, And anybody who doesn't have to make their living at a day job they hate, I applaud. And even if you have a side hustle or in some small way, like making moves to do something you love. I always respect that. And what's sort of come about in the last few, maybe, I don't know, year or so. I don't know when he started his first campaign, but there's been this thing where I think it ultimately started with Vito and Dick Masterson, who are kind of, I would categorize them as maybe like trolls. Vito is not really a comedian. He doesn't really perform stand-up, but he would call himself a comedian. He went viral, I think, when they were doing like the protests for Netflix, and the people that were employees of Netflix that were like kind of woke were protesting like Dave Chappelle because they were like, oh, he's a transphobe, even though he had a fucking trans opener for years. And Vito was seen kind of like out there with a sign, and that's how he kind of made a splash in the news, and white people, he was like, oh, I'm a comedian. Me and Frank like to give him shit because he doesn't actually get on stage with a microphone.
I feel like if you don't do stand-up, I don't know if you can call yourself a comedian.
I know. You can say you're a comedy person.
Sure, or you do something like comedy podcasting.
Comic adjacent.
Yeah, something
That's
like
what
that.
I use. Comic adjacent.
Right.
I do want to
doing
say I have seen Vito do stand-up, which is always impressive.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I always clap when he does stand up. I'm very proud of him because that's a monumental task for Vito.
Yes, even just standing up, I'm amazed his heart could take it. And
I'm assuming he's big.
and I don't know if this is where
He's large.
Where it started, but Vito started criticizing Eric July's comic book. He just was like, "Oh, I think it sucks." And then Dick Masterson, who's a good friend of his, also they both host a show called The Biggest Problem in the Universe. And I've met the two of them. When I was in LA, I don't know if it was this most recent trip or the one before, I went to like Dick Masterson's house. I like did their show, and it's such a different story when you meet people versus like you could think you have like a sense of somebody online, but when you meet them in person, you're like, oh, okay. And I just get the sense that there's a difference between somebody who actually like wants to cause ill will and someone who's maybe a little bit of an antagonizer, someone who likes to kick the beehive a little bit. And that's the sense I kind of got from Vito. And then, I guess the two of them started criticizing Eric and this comic book. Oh, it sucks. And then I think what happened is that Vito started asking people, you know what I'm talking about? Like, oh, you're put into camps, you're put into like groups. He started asking people maybe around Eric or his friends or whatever, people he streamed was like, did you actually read the comic book? And I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but a few people started saying like, no, I haven't actually read it. And then he took that, ran with it to be like, yeah.
Let me correct the story a little bit, and it's only because I'm uniquely attached to this, as I always end up being. I never want to be, but I'm always just in it. So Vito had actually been criticizing Eric's book for about a year before it came out. Like he was criticizing it right away, saying it wasn't going to be good, and Dick was making fun of him all the time. Like, you're just jealous, because Vito is also, and he's creating an independent comic that is crowdfunded called Super Killer. And so he kind of seemed jealous, right? Like, Eric's book is making $3 million. Yeah. Vito's book is making burritos to make ends meet. It's fine. And Dick was making fun of him. Like, you're just jealous of his success, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then the book comes out, and I had a panel show going on, and Dick Masterson was on my show, and another of my friends, Nina, was on my show. And they kind of got into a little back and forth because Dick said, look, this book is out, and no one is actually praising the story of the book. No one's talking about how good the writing is or anything else. They're all just talking about how great the crowdfunding did. I mean, it made so much money. It's awesome.
Like, oh, he's so successful. Yeah.
Right, which it is. And to be clear, my position has always been, I don't care if the book's good or bad. I love independent creation. I love this parallel economy idea that he's been promoting, and I want people to buy into that, so that no matter what, you've got these personalities that you like and develop a relationship with to buy stuff from, because they don't hate their audiences. Like, that's the main criticism of Marvel and Disney is like, you hate us. We've been supporting you forever. So Dick says, story probably sucks because no one's talking about it. And then Nina asked him if he's read it. And he says, well, no. But then he asked her back, have you? And she said no. And then it turned into a thing, right? And so then he was challenged, like, oh, you haven't read it. So not by Nina, but the audience. You haven't read it. How can you even criticize it? So people dared him to read it and criticize it. Well, then he did. He read it. He gave it a negative review on the writing. Gave some writing notes that kind of looked like, writing 101 kind of critique from college. And then that's when everything really started up. I mean, because Eric is a good dude. His audience can be very, very defensive, which you find in these sort of alt circles, right? Like, I like my person. How dare you attack them? I want them to succeed, and you're trying to ruin them. And it's spiraled way out of control from there. But to be clear, that that initial like review, I haven't read it thing came from Dick after, you know, Vito had been talking about it for about a year, but no one listens to Vito.
Okay, that's really helpful. Yeah, so he's been quietly, maybe not quietly, but critiquing it, and then you go, oh, well, your comic book kind of sucked, or it's not doing as well, so clearly you're jealous. But then I think, and so then, okay, let me see if I can do this in chronological. Okay, so this is Vito. This is his. I didn't even know that he had a comic book.
Nobody does, Chrissy. Which has actually been one of the criticisms, right? Like, they're like, well, you're just trying to raise, you know, awareness for your book because, no, you know, you didn't have the reach. You don't have the reach of Eric, which is true. Vito and Dick run kind of a very niche podcast,
right?
And their fans love it, but outside of that, it doesn't get the, you know, the sort of broad reach that Eric does. Eric's worked at the Blaze, so he has, or he still works at the Blaze, I believe, and he had an opportunity to be on several personality shows and kind of
Why didn't Vito do a superhero who loses 100 pounds? Like, you know, I think I would read that story. It could be it'd be a self-insert, but
just keep sending issues to Lizzo.
You have to lose 100 pounds then to do the story of the man who lost 100 pounds. So then there's that activity going. And then it gets kind of jacked up another level because a random fan shows up at the warehouse, the comic book warehouse for Rippaverse, and like takes photos of himself, like, or I don't know if it's photos or video outside of the place, which I guess you can find out where these places are. Like, I don't know if they're, to what degree they're publicly listed, but it is like, it's a public business,
it's
right?
a public business. I feel like that's like, while it's a little bit, you're like, okay, maybe you shouldn't have done that. I feel like that's not as bad as if he'd showed up to his house. That's where you're like, dude,
Right, so this fan posts photos, and to which Eric responded, okay, please correct me.
No, and this isn't a correction, it's sort of an expansion. It's not a random fan. Riley is associated with the Dick Show in the fact that Riley has been kind of like a booking agent for Dick and helps produce the live stage shows and stuff that they do.
That makes this worse.
That does make it worse.
Now, I don't know what level of involvement Riley has on the day-to-day runnings of The Biggest Problem or the Dick Show. I know that on those sorts of things, you know, he has helped book guests for the Dick Show itself and again, helped with the stage productions of things. But yeah, Riley went to the Rippaverse warehouse and he he used stickers to post 3 articles of currency, 2 20s and a 1 on them with pictures of bunnies drawn on them. And that's, this is deep autistic internet story.
I was going to say,
how did the bunnies become like the attack emoji?
I don't understand.
So
bunnies.
The lore behind that is that when Eric was talking about Dick, he called him Baxter Bunny. And so then the Dick and his audience co-opted Baxter Bunny, and they would go into like live streams where Eric was on, and they would post like bunnies in the chat, like the bunny little emojis.
Just spamming.
All over the place.
This is so weird.
And so,
very jihadist.
They were the jihadists of the chat.
Fucking jihads.
Yeah, throwing bunnies everywhere. That's what Palestine did to Israel.
Gmoji.
Bunnies everywhere.
If that's only all they did, we wouldn't be in this position.
Yeah, I want to make some things clear. There's a lot of internet lawyering going on around that incident because it was suggested by some people that a fat weirdo showing up at your warehouse and putting stickers on the window would be some sort of trespass or property damage, like criminal mischief or vandalism. And so it was subsequently suggested, because it's in Texas, that you would be able to shoot this person and kill them. And people seem to be very happy about that concept. That is not like a thing that you should rely on.
What if somebody was living or sleeping at the warehouse, and then that becomes like no, it's not private property. It's not like your residence.
Texas allows defensive property. So Texas is this weird place where it is by the letter of the law. Like if one of you is walking around and your guy is with you and he's holding your purse and some guy runs up and grabs the purse from him and runs off, in theory, you can actually pull out a gun and shoot the guy who's running away from you with a purse and kill him. Like, no other state can you do this.
Not
But
even South Carolina, where Anthony's moving to? That's good.
Yeah,
shit.
no,
I would have
nowhere.
thought we would have looked
Only
into
at night.
that.
Yeah,
Only
I
at
would
night.
Been like,
Yes. Check that.
number one.
So it's only at
one
night
on his
because
list.
it's based on old cattle rustling laws, right? Like the ranchers would be out there and someone would take cattle from them a long way away. You're not going to catch them. There's no one around. You pull out your
Oh,
rifle.
wow.
You can shoot the guy and go get your cattle back. That just has never really changed, and Texas kind of likes it. So
kinda
there
like
is a
it.
thing where if someone is taking your property
Down for
or
this.
damaging it and destroying it, and there's no way to prevent it, and it's at night, you have a theoretical ability to shoot them. Now, you may still have to go before a jury and justify why you shot someone. But to be very clear, no matter how you read the statute, taking a sticker, putting it on a dollar bill, and slapping it on a window is not destroying or damaging property under that statute. And if you shoot someone for that, may God help you with that jury, because that is not where you want to be. Like, you do not want to have to explain a smoldering corpse to the
Right.
jury.
Over an
because of-
in-person super chat.
I really
I'm giving
enjoy
you
this.
$41.
$41.
I really enjoy the stuff that people come up with online and just assume that they're right. And they're like, "Wah," and they go off on the reading threads sometimes is one of my favorite things, because it's clear that people are retarded, but they can't stop. And they're just
Yeah.
convinced that they're absolutely convinced they're correct.
And then so
Love it.
So I can understand, like, if this guy's loosely or tightly associated with Dick and his shows, how that would add more blame to Dick and Vito for this whole thing. And
Of course. And when I say all of this, just know you should not go to a warehouse. Like, because something is
No.
legal does not mean
You
that
should
you
push
should
it.
do it. Like, you
Yes.
should definitely not. And especially in the context of like the tension that was building and all that stuff, that should not be a thing that anyone does. Riley should not have gone to the warehouse to do that. But it's not illegal, and it's not a trespass, and it's not anything. The warehouse has 3 entrances. The parking lot has 3 entrances. 2 of them have gates, but the other one, which is attached to a public road, does not. There's no sign that says no trespassing, no entry. It's a 3-stall warehouse. 2 of the stalls are occupied, one by the Rippaverse, the other one by a vinyl wrap shop for like cars. Right, they'll wrap your car and put Anime girls on it and
Wow.
stuff. And so the public is allowed to go into this parking
That's
lot.
cool.
And that's, there's been a lot of things about it's a private business, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there is no such thing as a private business
OnlyFans.
in that sense.
Oh,
Private
Unless you
business, my
post-
business is my privates.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Business
yeah.
about your privates.
Unless you build a giant fence around your vagina, though, anybody can just come up and look at it. So that's the idea, right? Like, you cannot, if you want people to stay away from your parking lot, you have to put a fence around the whole thing, a gate up, or clearly posted signs that say you cannot be here, which like
Right.
they do at every construction site you've ever seen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's not there. So anybody is technically free to go up there until someone with the right to ask them to leave asks
Wow.
them to leave. And
Oh,
that
thank you
was
for
happening.
finding this clip.
The
Yeah.
video.
Rewind it.
Look at this guy.
He
What a
really think
specimen.
He's like
What a
doing something cool. He's like, look how awesome I look. I don't even understand this.
He looks too fat even for Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Also vandalized his building with these stickers. We'll see what he has to say about that.
What?
Giving a finger to the security camera.
This reeks of so much autism. Let's see what he has to say
Yeah.
about
Does
that.
seem
I just gave
very.
him some money. Yeah.
So there's a whole complicated backstory here too. So Eric allegedly has hairy arms and shoulders, and again, his
So
company is called.
isolate-
Maybe he's Sicilian.
Now, notice Riley does too, right?
Right.
Like Riley there, not bald, shoulders and arms.
He looks like he just
So-
came out of hibernation. Yeah.
Yeah, and put
If
his
he
twink
just
down
came out
and
of
then walked
hibernation,
away.
he'd be thinner.
Oh, right.
Also, like, this
getting ready
dude
for
over
Hibernation where
here.
you can still eat.
So
It
he
looks
had
like he's wearing a
created
deflating
parody.
fat suit. I can't figure out his body. I'm so like, he has tits,
His
but
boobs are
like,
bigger than mine. Can you imagine those in a push-up bra? The cleavage thing.
Yeah.
it's never somebody
Oh,
good
God,
looking
it's so
doing
hairy,
shit like
though.
this, you know?
And the
Yeah, and-
beanie man.
This is what happens when you're not good looking enough to have
Yeah.
sex. You have too much time on your hands and you do this kind of shit.
Oh, isn't he dating
Via,
Mint Salad?
I hate to
Actually,
break it to you. Riley has a Fansly
Nick.
and an OnlyFans.
he is. What he does? Oh,
Wait, he has an OnlyFans?
Fansly.
Amazing. It's
What does
amazing.
he
This
do?
world is
Are
an
Are you
amazing
fucking with
place.
us, or he really
You
does?
seen this?
Look, that's up to y'all to figure out.
Nick,
I think I might subscribe.
no, I've never seen this. Dear Christ.
are you fine?
Oh.
Okay, so
Curiosity.
Rippaverse is the name of Eric's company. Riley had created a parody T-shirt store account called the Clippaverse, which had a pair of clippers on it, and there's like a kayfabe wrestling promo to shave Eric's arms. Because it's the internet, man. Like I can't explain the
so
jokes; they just
stupid.
exist in their own thing. So, somebody from the Rippaverse or somebody working allegedly at their behest, it's hard to be 100% sure, did a DMCA takedown of the Clippaverse, which sure looked like protected parody and probably was an incorrect application of DMCA usage, but that took down the store, got Twitter accounts banned and all of that stuff. So the super chats, Riley was saying, hey, you're not answering my super chats, so here I'll do them in person, slap them on the window.
Oh, okay.
The super chats were, I believe, why did you take down the Clippaverse? So that's kind of the backstory there. It's not like this sprung up out of nowhere and Riley's just some random person uninvolved. I mean, he was creating a parody thing and that was taken down through DMCA, which some people would suggest is not how
Oh,
you want
wow.
to do.
And it looks just like it.
It looks
Oh
just
my
like it.
God.
Yeah.
And I think, was he also associated? There's another Twitter account that I think it says like Rippaverse L's or something like that. And where it's sort of critical of like him and kind of like everyone in
I don't
his sort
oh,
of
there's
world.
Goalpost.
Yes, that's
If
the
that's
one.
true. That's actually a pro Eric July account that exists.
What?
So,
Okay.
Yeah, what they do is they highlight the hate type thing or talk about, it's like those women posting L's, but for comic book
Okay.
fans.
Oh God. All right.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's that. But they're supposedly, no one really knows who's behind any Twitter account.
Thank you,
but
Drew.
supposedly they're a fan of Eric and they like promote his stuff.
Okay.
But no, they're not associated with Riley to anybody's knowledge. That doesn't that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, they say they're not affiliated with Rippaverse
Oh, okay. I see.
because they're not officially, but they are in support of it apparently.
Okay.
All right.
Got it.
So.
Those women posting L's posts, I'll see them sometimes. They always make me laugh because it's always like some girl who's like going through a hard time that's like not really her fault. And they're like, ha ha, you fuck. That's what you get for being a woman, you fucking asshole. And I'm like,
yeah, you didn't realize it was a White Claw. You drank it. You got fired from your job driving a bus.
bitch. And you're like, whoa, Jesus Christ. The internet's wild.
I know.
I love them.
So it's this interesting, like, it brings up
Angry in their basement.
these interesting conversations of like what is okay within the rules in the world of parody, what is okay in the world of criticism, and this whole thing has just gotten worse and worse because I feel like Eric might take himself a little bit too seriously, which might escalate some of the detractors and some of these things, and he just. It's like, I don't think you're ever so big and so successful that you can't take criticism. And sometimes,
Right.
sometimes
mean-
you should listen to your haters.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a tough situation because you mentioned earlier that this is like a weird sphere of the internet that has really gotten big by criticizing companies like Disney and Marvel and DC. Eric is certainly one of those people. And the idea is like, well, this is a big company and we're building up this ability to speak out on behalf of fans. And they do that really well. But then when it hit back in that same way, people immediately reacted. Some critics out there might suggest that they reacted in the way that Marvel and DC and Disney creators have reacted, suggesting that people might be racially motivated. Some people might be jealous of success. They can't get their thing done. I mean, it kind of sounded like the exact same story happening, but in this smaller creator community. And the thing that you have to understand about Dick Masterson, who I've known and been friends with for really, my whole channel started because I covered a lawsuit against him. That was my first YouTube series
Okay.
of
Yeah.
videos.
He's actually like a funny, I don't know, I think he's a cool guy. I mean, I've only known him maybe a year, but
I did
Yeah,
one show with him.
funny. Yeah.
He was perfectly lovely to me. But I don't know anything about him besides that.
I know nothing
I've known him
about
for 6 years. Oh, sorry. I've known him for 6 years now, and I've met him in person several times, hung out with him on multiple occasions, and he's fine. He's hilarious, but you have to understand his perspective. If something is funny to him and then generates interest, usually by you reacting, he will keep being like, he'll keep finding it funny. It's not going to stop if it's funny. If you ignore him and no one cares, then he won't
Exactly.
keep going, because it's not, there's no profit to it.
Yeah.
You mentioned like he and Vito are a little bit trolly, which is definitely true. Like, they will troll you, but as long as it's funny, if it stops, then it'll stop.
Right. If there's no
Because-
attention around it, if you're not triggering anyone, it's like you're taking the wind out of the sails. And I always say, like, you always show people your soft spots when you show them what you're triggered by.
Right.
And then your haters will go in on that. So the degree to which you can be neutral to the things that trigger you is probably the best way to go if you're an online person with haters, which we all have. So
Yeah.
And one more minor detail about all of this, so that people know the personalities involved, because I know you guys out there in the real world listening to this are like, what?
who the fuck are these people?
What is
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of me right now.
Kate's like, I don't understand.
I'm
I'm
trying.
so
I'm trying to
sorry
figure it
that
all
you're
out. No,
brought
you're doing a
into
great
this.
job.
But so Eric has, the other part of his sort of buildup has been an idea called monetizing your haters. When someone comes at Eric, he will go right at them, like straight to it, for the, as his channel was growing up. So he'd be criticizing Marvel, and then you'd have these people who really like Marvel and DC or whatever come out and say his analysis is bad, or he's stupid, or whatever. And then he would go to their show. He'd say, hey, you want to have me on? We could talk about this.
Yeah.
Or he'd bring them on his show, and he would absolutely destroy them. And it's hilarious to watch. Like, that's some of my favorite content that he does.
Yeah.
The problem is, you have to know when it's the wrong fight. And fighting with Dick is the wrong fight most of the time, because he doesn't care if he's the bad guy. He just finds that even funnier. And so Eric's like sort of persona runs up against this other persona, and you get this nuclear autistic holocaust where the two sides, they're at a permanent impasse until
Wow.
one of them gives. So
And then there was also, gosh, wasn't there? And I don't know who started this, but there was someone reached out to, what was it? It was like maybe a religious group, or it was a Christian group that had the initials of ISOM. It was like something about International School of Ministry or something like that. Someone concerned trolled this group, this corporation, whatever, and said, "Oh, wow, it's so great that you lent out your name to this comic book," which put them onto it, and then
Wow.
it kind of inspired this. I don't know if it was a lawsuit per se or
Like a cease and
is
desist type
now.
situation.
Oh,
Of course
God.
it is now.
So
wow.
this is a very interesting developing story. Yes, someone reached out to the ministry and with a concerned troll, clearly a troll email, because it had a bunch of inside jokes in it. And only people who were following this drama closely would know all of the references. But hey, that happens. And then, yes, a trademark lawsuit is filed by this International School of Ministry. Now, for a little bit of backstory, they own registered trademarks of ISOM and the ISOM acronym. And that
the
is
ministry
really
does, or
important.
Eric
Yeah,
does.
The ministry does, and
Okay.
Eric does not. Now, the ministry has owned these for 25 years,
Damn.
and they're the #1 Google search result for ISOM, or at least they were. They might be #2 now, because Eric's campaign has been creeping up there. So we all knew that this trolling thing happened, but a year ago, someone brought up on Twitter to Eric, which he retweeted. This is actually 15 months ago, technically. This kind of came to light last night, that someone had brought up that this is a Black Christian character, and there's the International School of Ministry,
wow.
and it was kind of dismissed. But now that kind of pushes the timeline on this trademark thing way back. Since then, the ministry has sued them in a trademark lawsuit to protect their trademark. They were in talks to resolve this thing. Those talks apparently broke down because, according to the ministry, Eric's lawyers didn't respond. And so the ministry had given a deadline of October 10th. They didn't respond. So on October 11th, they posted that they would be proceeding with the lawsuit.
Oh my God.
Eric did a response video, which is ill-advised in my opinion. He implied that they were a fake Christian organization because they were suing, and Christians aren't supposed to do that apparently.
No.
And then he told the story of how he used how he came up with the name ISOM, which is the name of his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather or something like that, who's born in like 1850, died in 1929 or something like that. And he was an inspirational guy, and he kind of looks like if you look him up, he kind of looks like a very inspirational individual who I think served in the Civil War in one of the quote unquote colored units that were back then. And so that all happens. That's the source of the name ISOM. The problem is that's not really relevant at all to a trademark lawsuit.
Right.
The question is, are you using the name in trade? Is there a likelihood of consumer confusion, and who used it first? Well, the ministry clearly had been using it first. They're the top result. They've been building this thing. They're a huge ministry organization. They have 20,000 training sites.
Wow.
And they distribute printed materials. And that's an important thing. The trademark they own is category 16, well, and 9, but 16 is kind of the relevant one for now because it is printed materials. It covers things like comic books and fictional works. So they're now in this trademark dispute, which is being exacerbated. And part of the problem in this weird world of the internet is that normally, like, two people would not encounter these two products in the same place. But with both of them being, this one being this sort of
You don't
old
think
horse,
Christian nerds would stumble upon both things?
there are Christian comic books out there, which a lot of people don't seem to understand. I own several of them for my kids, but normally you wouldn't run into these things because they print like ministry training materials most of the time. They don't currently create any comic books, but they could, in theory, do that.
To reach the youth.
They were they were the top dog on Google, and now Eric's like either number 2 or number 1, depending on your own like algorithm. And so now you do encounter these two things in the exact same place where you otherwise wouldn't. And all of their products are ordered virtually. There's not like retail stores to get them. So now they're saying, a random customer coming in and looking for us could find them. And now we're being associated with Eric's speech and with his community, which his community did a very interesting thing. They posted a bunch of comments on his video saying, as a Christian, I don't like these people. And they're saying, well, there's no brand overlap. So, well, he kind of destroyed that one, guys. You just said
the International School of Ministry is a video-based Bible school. According to their own words, their vision is to turn every local church in the world into a ministry training center and then into a church planting center. According to their statement of faith, they believe in the deity of our Lord, Jesus Christ, in his virgin birth and in his bodily resurrection. They believe the Bible to be the inspired and infallible word of God. And this is partially why I'm shocked that a Christian organization would do such a thing and bring us into a baseless trademark lawsuit. Before I proceed with the rest of our statement, I'd like to be very clear. We were not in any communication with Good Shepherd or the International School of Ministry prior to the filing of the lawsuit. There were no obvious opportunities presented to engage in a good faith conversation before the lawsuit was filed about what's being alleged.
Well, hold on. And I've never written anything, but other than jokes. But if I'm going to make a thing, wouldn't you Google it first and see
and find out
what else?
Yeah.
Like before I started Simcast, I Googled Simcast, and I was like, okay, it's one old Twitter account with just a few followers. I think I'm good. But
right, and that's kind of the tough thing that people seem to misunderstand is as the person coming later, you have an affirmative duty to seek this out in good faith with reasonable effort. So you check the trademark database. It's a great way to start to find out if there's a trademark. But that's actually not only that's not only the beginning of your search, it can't be the end, because just because a trademark isn't registered doesn't mean someone doesn't own it, right?
Wow.
Like someone else could have a thing. Now this one, if you search the trademark database or Google, you would find immediately the results for ISOM existing. And if you search trademark database, you'll see the result of them owning this trademark,
did Eric
particularly for 25 years.
Trademark as well, but just later, or did he not trademark at all?
I don't know if he has attempted to trademark ISOM or not. I've heard sketchy back and forth about that, so I don't want to say yes or no. I don't know legitimately. He has trademarked Rippaverse. So speculation would be that he's sophisticated enough or is advised by lawyers who are sophisticated enough to navigate the trademark system. They know how to trademark one thing. And again, this all just got complicated last night when people dug up these old tweets about ISOM being the #1 Google search result and, being a Christian ministry organization. That was told to Eric, who retweeted it. So they knew at least 15 months ago that this organization existed. And he says there's no good faith opportunity no opportunity to be in a good faith conversation with them. I'm not anybody's lawyer out here, but you have a duty to scope that out. They don't know you're making a comic book. Like, they don't know, presumably, that you're coming into the business. You should be reaching out to them to make those conversations. Hey, we're going to create this comic book company. Main character's name is ISOM. We're wondering if you're thinking that's going to have any problems. Here's the concept art for the logo, et cetera. Those are the conversations you would want to have. You're not required to, certainly, but you reap the consequences of that action.
It's just
possibly.
part of covering your ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem is, the comic book, is it named ISOM or just the main character's name is ISOM?
The comic book itself is called ISOM. It didn't have to be. The main character's name is ISOM. It could have been called The Adventures of ISOM. Like, they could have put a longer name, so-and-so as ISOM, and these things would have made it much less likely. But it's just right on the top, ISOM, and then #1, #2 is also out, #3 is in the works. That's kind of the problem here, because now, they're associated.
Even though it's not the name of the company, it's just the name of a character and the name of a book. That's still enough that there's enough overlap that they can sue for trademark infringement?
It can be. And the question is, does the use of this thing create customer confusion? But so Eric goes on to later in the video.
Should we play it more?
Well, I'm going to run out of time before too long.
Okay.
But I can explain this really quickly. Later in the video, Eric brings up a comparison. Lots of law uses analogies, right? And he says that Sonic, the restaurant, is a restaurant that exists, a drive-in restaurant, and is known for fast service or whatever. And then this character, Sonic the Hedgehog, exists, and that Sonic is a fast character. And so why isn't this a problem? Well, to briefly explain it, Sega does not own Sonic as a trademark. Sonic owns Sonic as a trademark. The Sonic company, or the parent company, does. Sega owns Sonic the Hedgehog as a trademark, which clearly distinguishes these two things.
Gotcha.
They're not the same trademark. And trademark is, it's very strict, but it's also very easy to get around, because if you change it at all, you're changing the whole, the branding, that you're changing the whole mark. So again, this is Core Power. Core Power Yoga exists.
What is that?
This is a
dick juice?
Yeah, it's a protein drink,
it's a
right?
protein.
That's where bonus
Are you
come from.
sponsored?
Core Power.
No, I just drink a lot of them. It's the only thing that maintains my beautiful shoulders. No, so it's but Core Power by Fairlife and Core Power Yoga exist. Those two things are very different, right? Because one is yoga. Clearly yoga. The other one, the ISOM and ISOM are just ISOM and ISOM. So now it's up to someone. And the standard for this is the reasonable consumer, not the consumer of online independent comic books, not the consumer of online Christian ministry materials. It's like, if you see these two things on the shelf next to each other at a store, are you going to go, those are the same thing?
I would say the average person would not confuse one with the other.
No. If you're looking at a comic book versus fucking
Pamphlets?
those are two very different things.
Let me provide you the mild counter argument. And this is the hard part, right? Because you say that, and that's true. And that's why I've said the whole time, I don't think the ministry has the best trademark argument. But it's complicated by the SEO and search results and all of that stuff. But if you're looking on a shelf, one of the things that the company has brought up in their lawsuit is that every piece of printed material they have has ISOM branded right on it. And so you're going to walk down a thing and you'll see, again, a hypothetical bookshelf with pamphlets and ministry training materials that all say ISOM on them. And then the next thing is a comic book, which of course looks completely different.
Their comic book, yeah.
Right. It looks completely different. ISOM is stylized, the writing is stylized differently, but it's in the theme of the comic book. So it's like, wait, is that thing this same company, but just their comic look? Is it stylized in this way because you're selling a comic book versus here is how you talk to indigenous tribes in Ghana or something? Like, I don't know what they sell. It doesn't really matter. But again, the hypothetical consumer
and people do
hypothetically
think Jesus was black. There are some people who think that.
And one of the other arguments that they've used is
that didn't help.
No, Black Jesus is great. Black Jesus is good.
It's fantastic.
I'm not going to say that joke. No, I'll say that.
You can. It's compound media.
You can say whatever you want, Nick.
But he stole salvation instead of bringing it. No,
he looted it.
He has a cross on his penis on the character art. Has a cross where his penis is. Now,
really?
They say it's,
on his costume. And then there's no dick. There's just a cross.
Not actually on his penis.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. I guess I haven't seen it, Chrissy. Maybe that's the Holy Caduceus. But no, so there's a cross on the costume right where his crotch is, and they've said this is, could be seen as a Christian character.
Wow.
And so now it's not just a comic book; it's a Christian-themed comic book. Now Eric says it isn't, but again, that's not the question. The question is a reasonable consumer who knows nothing about this stuff. Do they walk up and see a giant cross on the penis of the cover of the comic? And if you pull up the cover of the comic, you'll see it. Zoom in on his dick there.
Yeah,
and
zoom all the way
there
in.
it is.
See? Yeah,
Oh
you're right.
my goodness.
So I do
that's
have to
God's
admit,
dick.
I would think
That's
that
not right.
that dick is doing God's work.
That seems pretty deliberate.
Right, and I have no idea why the cross is there or what. I don't design comic book characters. I don't really care.
That's where you take communion, Nick.
Yes.
Weren't you in college, for Christ's sakes?
But it's all becoming a problem, and the compounding of it is what is becoming the bigger problem for Eric. At the onset of this thing, I didn't think they have a good case. But every time his fans go out and raise a bunch of stink, and then there's tags and hashtags and stuff. If you search hashtag ISOM or you search ISOM, you're very possibly going to get a video of Eric saying something in a very libertarian way, like I would about someone, right? He does not speak politely about some of the subjects that he talks about. And that's one of the things they said. They're he uses lots of profanity and he uses lots of language that we would find unacceptable in our Christian organization.
Yeah.
But now that's there. And there's also this weird accusation, which I won't get into too much, about defrauding of a charity, which regardless of the truth of it, I don't think it's true that he defrauded a charity. Some of his answers have issues, but that being said, I don't think he defrauded anybody. Now that accusation is out there in search results for a ministry that is entirely driven by grants and charity donations.
Fuck.
So ISOM charity fraud is a potential search result that you'll get. And the ministry's
No.
So it's traditional consumer confusion is would these two products be confused when you're buying them? But it's also the other point of, are you unintentionally damaging a brand that you don't have the right to damage? It's not... He doesn't own that trademark. And if he devalues their brand and a consumer who doesn't know about them just pulls this up, are they thinking that he's a representative of this ministry and all of this stuff? That's their argument. And I know everybody can say the simple thing. Well, no one should confuse these things. They're obviously different, et cetera. But the answer is always, you didn't have to use the mark. You didn't have to use the thing that wasn't yours. It's you can go in a house that you don't own and have all the greatest intentions, and then people can quibble over whether or not you left it clean enough, like in an Airbnb. But you didn't have to go to the Airbnb. You didn't have to do that thing. And so, at the end of the day, you may think you're justified, but that might not matter. And it's really unfortunate because the trademark stuff shouldn't be a big deal. And now it's bogging down the whole thing. And I think that sucks. I wish it was resolved immediately.
And it's made so much worse by And we all have like mentally ill fans. I love them. We would be here without them, but this situation is being made worse by
because people
fans who think they're doing their
good
thing for the person that they love.
Because it's always coming from good intentions, but sometimes it's better to be like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't say this thing because it could be interpreted in a way that will just fuck your person over.
Yep.
Wow.
100%. And that's really how this started with the even with Dick's criticism of Eric. Eric stayed out of it for a very long time. And that was very commendable of him. I think that was the right thing. But his fans relentlessly went after Dick and Vito, who again, like Dick thrives in that environment, and that's going to just keep fueling it. So he keeps responding, and it keeps building up. And then the way this works as a creator is you get demanded to answer. Like your fans will be like, "Why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this?" Eventually, you have to say something, and then it's it's on, and it's a mess. I've been through this a few times.
Oh no, I've exhausted you, Nick. I didn't even tell you we were going to talk about this.
But I mean the situation that Eric's in.
Yeah.
Because I speak on issues that have two very clear sides, legal issues: Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, Kyle Rittenhouse, and the unjust prosecutors of Kenosha County. Like, I'm here talking about these things, and you get people on both sides, and then one of them will, start saying stuff, and your fans will engage. You'd be like, I don't really care about this. Like, this isn't a big deal. But then it starts to become a big deal, and you feel like at some point you have to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And
like they expect everyone to have a hot take on Israel and Palestine, and it's like, don't look at me. I'm just trying to fit into my pants.
I can't pronounce either of their cuisines, so I don't care.
Not everyone needs a platform. That's the problem with the internet.
And not everybody needs to have their opinion not everyone needs to come out and it would be stupid to say something if you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But people expect you to have an opinion on everything when the truth is, I don't fucking know. I don't know what's going on. What the fuck? I'm selling pictures of my boobs. Like, leave me the fuck alone.
If you have a question about boobs, hit me up.
Yeah, I can help you with that.
Who has better boobs? Israel, Palestine. I can talk about that. Let me see some photos. Oh, they're dead? Oh, shoot. Well.
Well done.
What a bummer.
Well, I'm repping Squad A Cup, so it's fine. Listen,
Nick, thank you for summing this up. I know you have to scram. Nick will actually be on my show with me this weekend in Minnesota. Nick will be doing comedy or whatever the hell he wants on stage with myself and Lila Hart this Saturday at the Great. Wait, I know the name. It's in Sartell, Minnesota. It's called the Great River Bowl and Partners Pub this Saturday at 9:00.
Oh, it's going to be a blast. I get to finally call myself a comedian because it'll be the first time I'm doing stand-up, so it'll be...
Yes, I'm so excited. You're just naturally hilarious and smart, and thank you for really helping me put this whole drama together. There's so many parts to it, and it's such a mess.
Angles.
All I saw was just a bunch of stuff on Twitter. I kept seeing Nick tweeting out on Twitter, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. There was so much there. That was wild.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be involved in it.
Oh no!
I just wanted to drink and tell jokes.